Muzafar Sherif's 1936 conformity experiment. There was when people in a completely dark room, and the person was then seeing a light dot for 2 seconds, 15 feet apart, and due to an optical illusion, the autokinetic effect, which makes it that a light dot in the dark appears to move, that person saw that light dot when moving. And after a few rounds then, and they said always how far it was moving, after a few rounds, they settled then on an answer. And one person, for example, in the experiment said when it is always moving 9 inches to the side, or another person was saying it's moving 1 inch. Whatever, after some time they settled on the answer, and so every time the experiment was repeated, the optical illusion of the dot moving a bit to the side. Always the same, always 7, 7, 7, or whatever. Then they made the experiment a bit differently again. Now we had then 3 people sitting there, and first they all said their different answers, what they saw. So the person said a large number and another person smaller. And then they repeated it again, and they heard the answers of the other ones, and again and again. And after a few rounds, they all settled on the middle. So the person who at the beginning saw 8 inches the light dot moving, after 2-3 rounds had coming closer to what the other person was saying with 1 inch to the side. And they met then somewhere by 2.5 or 3. And then that group had found a new norm. And they always were saying it is moving that distance. And that is according to social psychology, written by Sharon S. Brehm and Saul M. Kassin, written in the year 1996, and it is a US American book on the page 334. The positions and views told are the ones of the book and don't necessarily align with them. Hi, welcome. I'm trying to learn social psychology. Today, Muzafar Sherif's 1936 conformity experiment. And after we've done that, we're gonna do leg injury prevention training. And if you participate in the leg injury prevention training, then it's already honest. We read that already 3-4 times. The early classics, 1936. Muzafar Sherif published a classic laboratory study of how norms develop in small groups. It was about how norms develop. His method, also described in chapter 1, was ingenious. Male students who believed they were participating in a visual perception experiment sat in a totally darkened room. They thought they were participating in a visual perception experiment. It was about finding out how norms develop. 15 feet in front of them, a small dot of light appeared for 2 seconds, after which subjects were asked to estimate how far it had moved. This procedure was repeated several times. Although subjects didn't realize it, the dot of light always remained motionless. The movement they thought they saw was in reality an optical illusion known as the autokinetic effect. In darkness, a stationary point of light appears to move, sometimes erratically in various directions. I was a little bit wondering about it, but I think, without having much thought about it, I think I now know why they used an optical illusion for it. So that everyone sees something else. It has to be something else. It has to be an optical illusion or something like that. It can't be the real movement. Then it would be just an estimation or something. I don't know, but it makes it, at least, it's not completely randomly that they used an optical illusion or just for fun. The reason was something about, I don't know, but it has to do something that it has to be differently for everyone. And to say that it is for everyone the same, maybe they could have just made it. So I don't know, I'm just right now wandering around, I'm looking over. I'm wandering around, whatever I want to say. Wandering around why they are using an optical illusion and not just a light dot. Because so it was differently for everyone. I think that was the reason. But is it then for everyone always the same, the optical illusion? Does an optical illusion change by another glance? Whatever. We try not to mention it why. I don't really know why, but I think they had a reason to use an optical illusion, not something else. But I think it would have worked also with a steady movement always going 2 inches to the side or something. So they used, and actually it was not moving, it was an optical illusion known as the autokinetic effect. and that is that in darkness a stationary point appears to move. At first, subjects sat alone and reported their judgments to the experimenter. After several trials, Muzafar Sherif found that subjects settled in on their own stable perception of movement, with the most estimates ranging from 1 to 10 inches. So the people then settled on their own perception. It could be a little more, a little bit less, but more or less every time they repeated the experiment, they saw it when moving 8 inches or something. During the next 3 days, subjects returned to participate in 3-person groups. When they made the experiment again, I don't really know what we know mean 3 days later, has there any reason why 3? As before, lights were flashed and subjects, one by one, announced their estimates. As shown in Figure 9.2, initial estimates varied considerably, but subjects later converged on a common perception. Eventually, each group established its own set of norms. So when they had 3 people there, they were asked what have they, and they said what they thought. And then another round was there, and they were much closer to the same answer. Then a third, fourth, fifth round, and then around the 4th or 5th round, or 3rd round here, they were all saying 2.5 inches. They found in the middle. Okay, that is the experiment. To the second experiment, when they sit here to Solomon Ashes, where we should compare the length of lines, there are said some things why. Looking at Sherif's and Ashes' research, let's compare these classic studies of social influence. Obviously, both demonstrate that our perceptions can be heavily influenced by others. But how similar are they really? Did Sherif's and Ashes' subjects exhibit the same kind of conformity and for the same reasons, or is this resemblance in the behavior more apparent than real? Right from the start, it was clear that these studies differed in some important ways. In Sherif's research, subjects were quite literally in the dark, so they naturally turned to others for guidance. When physical reality is ambiguous and we are uncertain of our own judgments, as in the autokinetic situation, others can serve as a valuable source of information. Yet Ashes' subjects found themselves in a much more awkward position. The ask was relatively simple, and they could see with their own eyes what answer were correct. Still, they often followed the incorrect majority, a third of the times. A bit more than a third even. Their task was relatively simple, and they could see with their own eyes what answers were correct. Still, they often followed the incorrect majority. In interviews, many of Ashes' subjects reported afterward that they were along with the group even though they were not convinced by it. Those who did not conform said they felt conspicuous, crazy, misfit. Let's try to puzzle something together for one moment. A similar experiment done by Solomon Ash, where people should compare the length of lines, which one of 3 exemplatory lines has the same one as the demonstrated line. They also said then to say what the other people were saying, so we try not to express it that way. We try to explain it. And when we were saying all in a round, what we saw that they were Confederates, they had given an answer in secret, and they said all the wrong answers suddenly. And then 37% of the times a person also said the wrong answer. And the reasons given for that then, that the person didn't want to feel like crazy, misfit, or conspicuous. The 2 experiments are not completely the same, but they're both about that people are influenced by other peoples. They're not completely the same. Influenced by other peoples, and that they try to fit in and follow what the other people are saying. Is that the proper conclusion? I think it is at least not a wrong one. That is what we're saying in the book. So let's try to do it. What do we have? We're having dot 2 seconds, autokinetic effect, light moving in darkness, 15 feet, 36, Muzafar Sherif. And when repeated, I think we have it. Let's try it. Muzafar Sherif's 1936 conformity experiment. I don't know what I said. Muzafar Sherif's 1936 conformity experiment. There was when people in a completely dark room, and the person was then seeing a light dot for 2 seconds, 15 feet apart, and due to an optical illusion, the autokinetic effect, which makes it that a light dot in the dark appears to move, that person saw that light dot when moving. And after a few rounds then, and they said always how far it was moving, after a few rounds, they settled then on an answer. And one person, for example, in the experiment said when it is always moving 9 inches to the side. Or another person was saying it's moving 1 inch. Whatever. After some time, they settled on the answer, and so every time the experiment was repeated, the optical illusion of the dot moving a bit to the side. Always the same. Always 7, 7, 7, or whatever. Then they made the experiment a bit differently again. Now we had then 3 people sitting there, and first they all said their different answers, what they saw. So the person said a large number, and another person smaller. And then they repeated it again, and they heard the answers of the other ones, and again and again. And after a few rounds, they all settled on the middle. So the person who at the beginning saw 8 inches the light dot moving, after 2-3 rounds had coming closer to what the other person was saying with 1 inch to the side. And they met then somewhere by 2.5 or 3. And then that group had found a new norm. And they always were saying it is moving that distance. And that is according to social psychology, written by Sharon S. Brehm and Saul M. Kassin, written in the year 1996, and it is a US American book. On the page 334, the positions and views told are the ones of the book and don't necessarily align with now. I didn't want to say the other thing. That was the social psychology part. If you're here for social psychology, you can go directly to the next part of social psychology, where we're going to talk about, where we're going to do one more video, and where we're going to make one video about both experiments. And when we say a bit more. So if you stay here and participate in the leg injury prevention training, have a good standing leg and swing of leg in front and to the side. And the other foot in front and to the side. And one foot in front and back. The other one in front and back. One leg up, leg to the side, very good. Leg into the middle and down. The other leg up, to the side, very good. Middle and down. Leg up, hands out, over cross. Middle, over cross. Middle and down. Other leg up, over cross. Middle, over cross. Middle and down. Leg to the side, left foot leg off the ground. Place it again onto the ground. Other leg. One hand on tummy, one on lower back, and lift one leg up. Try to bring the leg higher, pull the toes in. Control with the hands that you don't fall back. And pull the leg up. And the other leg. Leg high up, pull the toes in. And pull the leg up. And one leg up and press up to the side. Other leg up and to the side. And stand good on one leg, turn over to the leg, down into the knee, turn over again, and up again. Other leg, stand good, turn over, down into the knee, over again, up. Have a good standing leg, and go in front to the next side and so on. Always 2 imaginary 90-minute intervals on an imaginary dial of the clock. And with the other leg, 12 o'clock, 1 and 3, 10:30 and 9 o'clock, 7:30 and 6 o'clock, 4 and 3 o'clock. One heel onto the ground. Don't do it if you're pregnant. Lift it heel off the ground. Place it again onto the ground. Other leg. And one leg up and down. The other one. Legs a bit apart, position the arms up. Out and sink down. Hands onto the ground. Come back up. And roll slowly up again at the top and backwards. Shoulder roll. Arms up. And sink down. Hands onto the ground. Come back up. Roll slowly up again. At the top and backwards. Shoulder roll. And have a good standing leg, the other leg in the air, arms to the sides, and lean in front, the leg comes up and down again. And now pull the knee in and out again. And to the other leg. Leg back. And back. And pull the knee in and out. And back. Legs to the sides, push finger down. In and up. And out. In and close the legs. And out. That was the leg injury prevention training. I thank you very much and until next time.